and then 120 FPS you shoot for slow mo because you slow it down and you'll notice pixelation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you slow it down, 30 FPS is generally pretty standard and solid for streaming. I'd
Cool.
go with that.
That's what we're at now. That is actually what we do. It's what we've heard from our internet gurus as well. But okay, cool. Thank you for the answer and for the patience.
Yeah, of course.
So where we just were in conversation was we were talking about. I mean, you said you had experimented with.
So
Um,
do you just let do you what's your approach? Was my question with people that demonstrate they don't want to change.
yeah. So the healthy approach is if you have energy to help people, I recommend that you do. However, I think that it's really important to be aware of where they're at. And when I say being aware of where people are at, what I mean is like if somebody is not able to receive love, they won't, you know? And the same goes for support in general. Um, sorry, one sec. Yeah. So, what to do when someone is unwilling to receive? The healthy thing to do in terms of like self love and taking care of yourself is like, I mean, I find it healthy to ask yourself why you're trying to help. And if you're trying to help because it feels good and like for you, or because you want to master that skill, or you want to add value or whatever, then do it. Try to satisfy yourself if that's why you're doing it. But if you're doing it because you want to help them, then there's like an honest there's like an honest conversation that you need to have with yourself and potentially that person. I say potentially that person only because um, their willingness to like receive that accountability might not be there, and that's why I call them a bad client. Because if somebody like literally in the situation that you described, which you've seen me in as well, like what you just described, the way that you are with Peter is in many ways the way that I was with a former boss of ours, and that is the energy. You know, it's like I'm here to advise. You're either gonna let me advise, which is what you're paying me to do in a professional setting, or you're not. And you know, then you're wasting your money. In a situation where they're not paying for it, then like you're paying for it with your time. And should you want to give energy to people that don't respect your time or that aren't willing to receive it, would you tell a loved one to do that?
No, but like you back me into the logic of it. So like somebody's not willing to receive, and even if you're being paid for it, I'm looking for the principle here. I feel like the wise thing to do is to step away.
Yeah.
Like if they're not willing to receive, there's nothing to do. It doesn't matter how bad you want to help. There's nothing to do.
I mean, there is one thing to do, and it's to challenge their thinking. Like for you to like step back in that situation is kind of it's like like let's say it's a loved one that is dealing with some type of addiction or bad financial situation or whatever, like they're not going to want to hear the advice or the help. They're not going to be willing to receive it. There's still obviously the desire to try to help, and I think that you should help. If you have the energy to help, you should at least try, but just be conscious of where they're at. I think like the goal excuse me, the goal in those situations is to make sure that they feel loved and supported, but also to be clear about your opinions and to try to challenge their thinking. It's not about convincing them so much as it is just getting them to consider other 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 realities. You know, because here's the thing: if your plan and strategy was good enough, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know, it's like obviously I'm feeling a desire to help you because it feels like your expectations and reality aren't lining up, which is definitely always either a function of strategy or effort. So, which is it? And if it's both, then like let's consider changing that strategy or that energy, and I'm here to support you however I can. What they choose to do with that, that's up to them, but at least you've done your best at that point.
Yeah, that's fair. And then do you suggest um I find it to be healthy to vocalize after a certain point of trying and just saying, hey, I really I'm here to support you. Um and it just you're not open to the feedback I'm giving. And we've tried this a lot, etc. Is that conversation ever warranted?
So that conversation usually feels like ego for me, and maybe that's interesting to hear. But my perspective on this is, first of all, that people only accept feedback when it's really clear that like you're giving it to help, and if they're not perceiving it as help, they're not going to receive it. So asking people, like assuring people that you're there to help for one thing is really helpful, but also, in the data driven blah blah blah, but it starts with intention. Like they need to perceive you as there to help and be willing to accept that help, and like that's what sets the table for a productive conversation and good feedback. um, I think it's also really helpful to ask what they want. Like asking people, how can I help you or how can I be of service to you? It gives them the opportunity to very consciously and explicitly like give you permission, because unsolicited feedback or advice or critique never feels good. Um, it just never feels good. It doesn't even feel good when you ask for it all the time. The other
Yeah.
the other day I had this experience where I'm constantly showing my work, and I'm working really hard at it, harder than I ever have anything in my life. And I ask for feedback because I know that's the right thing to do, but deep down I ask for feedback because I want approval. You know, I want people to tell me that I did a good job. I want to get that sense of self assuredness and all that. And when I don't get it, it sucks. And then I have to coach myself through it in the moment. Like I remember last year I was getting ready to do this sales sprint with Grow, and I had this all planned out. I'm like, okay, cool, we're gonna be rich in a couple months, blah blah blah. And then the last thing that I did in my planning was to get some feedback, advice, coaching from the best two salespeople I know, and one of them happened to be rather disengaged and like didn't really give me any support. But the other one, he didn't critique me. He didn't critique the plan. He just basically shined light on blind spots that I have. Just some realities about sales. He's like, just so you know, sales are unpredictable. You just don't know what's gonna come of this, and people who aren't trained in sales usually like don't like. There's a learning curve there, and like just some realities that helped paint a less idealistic or optimistic or romanticized view that I had of the reality of that situation, and it sucked to hear. And I ended up not doing the sales sprint, you know. But I think it saved time and effort. I recovered from it in about 2 days, and I remember talking to my best friend Khalil about this, and him being like, "I know you're gonna bounce back from this. I know you're down right now. I've seen you like this before." And then after I was better, he was like, "Man, every time you do that, it impresses me. It impresses me like how you're able to search for that feedback, get feedback you don't want, and then not let it defeat you." And it was a bit of an overshare there, but hopefully you got something.
No, no, I first of all, I loved it. I also think it makes for great content. Here's my final question of the night, and I'm basically home. Is how do you mentioned something key? You said, I'm willing to get authoritative and not let people bully me in conversations, which is a skill I'm trying to build. And at times I've stumbled into it beautifully, and at times I've stumbled out of it beautifully. um, and so I'm curious to know what advice you have for me there. Because going back to the root of this conversation, to bring it full circle, part of the effectiveness in modeling that high energy was that it was effective in fighting bullies and people who uh, were just being disrespectful in conversation.
Yeah, or just a bad client, if I can slap the label on them.
Yeah, correct. But it also worked for family too.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean a bad
yeah,
client as in like a bad recipient of your support.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um, Let me ask you a question first, if that's okay. You actually know you've seen me do this in meetings with other people. You've seen this like stories about this, and you've seen me do this with you. Like, what do you see? Give me feedback on how you see me show up in moments that I feel challenged or bullied or confronted in a way that I don't agree with.
Um, I don't. I've always thought that you're just good at it.
Okay.
Frankly, I don't have a great answer here because I don't feel naturally skilled at this,
Hmm.
and so I've actually always admired that about you, and haven't. It's felt a little out of reach for me. It's felt very innate to you to be able to be that way. It's easy for me to say something like you're great at asking a question instead of getting upset or whatever, but you're a little bit more advanced than that because I've also seen you do it without asking a question
Yeah.
and just stating a fact. And so, yeah,
So I think that I mean I've seen you do this for one thing. I know that you have this skill. I've literally seen it, and I've seen you do it with me, and I've seen you, by through story and whatnot. I've observed you do it with other people, and I've heard people talk about you in a professional and personal setting. So I know that you can do this. But not but and it's so sometimes the response is curiosity, as in like, here's what I'm observing about your behavior. Can you just, yeah, I genuinely want to know like where you're coming from on this. Sometimes that comes off as rhetorical because sometimes it is rhetorical, and sometimes like there is no answer, and that's the point of me asking the question. And other times there is a good answer, and we both have an opportunity to learn, or maybe I just have an opportunity to learn because I'm not always right. And other times it's like I feel like the reason why people might struggle with this is that it's a reflection of your sense of self, and it's a reflection of like your perception of your self worth. Like I don't let people do that to me because, like by rule, I don't give people the authority to do that, and so by nature it happens way less. Or if it starts to happen, it's nipped in the bud. But also just because I have that standard for how I'm treated, I don't find myself in situations like that, and it's not conscious. Like when I feel disrespected, based on the level of disrespect or confrontation, like it's gonna get a different response. The times that I'm more stern are times that it's more extreme. Um, Not to say that I meet high energy aggression with high energy or aggression. Actually, I think one of the like Buddhist influenced, samurai influenced responses to aggression is to not match it. And it's it's interesting when you get people, because it's always emotion that drives that behavior from anybody. So when I see that emotion, like leaning into it with curiosity often turns into an opportunity for them to look at themselves, which they're obviously not doing. Maybe not obviously, but usually when we're swept up by an emotion, we're not observing ourselves in that state. We're participating in the state. We're riding in the car while that emotion's driving. And so leading with curiosity. There's a quote, I don't know if it's scientifically true or not, that says you can't be curious and frustrated at the same time. Um, I have experienced that, and when I'm frustrated, I lean in with like even with attitude. Sometimes it's like I genuinely want to know what thought process is leading you to act like this. You know, and it's just like straight up tell me. I want to learn. And
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
energy
So it
often
sounds like
rewards me.
curiosity is where you go. But I would let me play devil's advocate and push back on that because I've seen you do it without curiosity before,
Yeah.
and I admire that. And so, what is it that allows you to hold your ground in those conversations? Because I do agree that oftentimes it feels as though it is a like sense of self thing. I agree with that. I felt that, and I also reckon that you feel that too.
Yeah.
Like that's not a feeling that's exclusive to me. You're just
Not
better
at
at
all.
dealing with it. And so, um, what I'm curious for is like your method and your principle here for handling these. Because the challenge I have with curiosity is that it can't really be fake, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of are naturally curious because you low key are more interested in human psychology than any other subject.
Yeah.
And so, like, because that's just naturally interesting for you, it's kind of interesting for you to ask them that, like, what got you here? Uh, Whereas I don't care as much.
Yeah.
And so, like, I could fake being curious, which I've tried. It literally never works. Um, because I'm like, I'm not even curious, you
So
know?
yeah, this
Not to say I can't get better at it.
I'm yeah, I'm tempted to go in two directions with this. One of them is like that's a fundamental response that you have to criticism and feedback is is like that is how you what you're telling me is when people disrespect me, I don't want to know why, you know? And like I feel like you're I feel like that's worth unpacking and I don't think we necessarily have the conversation time to do that now, but it's like why? Because you are coming at the way that you come at life is with such purpose and good intention. And so like for somebody to be aggressive with somebody who's that pure of heart and spirit, it's like how are you not curious? I mean, I don't know.
I actually have an answer for this.
Yeah.
It's that I've actually just come up with very bad answers whenever I ask the question. So I've given up on people because typically when they're in a place where I'm being treated that way and I ask those questions, they're coming up with very bad answers.
That's the point, though. That's actually the point of why I'm asking. Like, I actually know this is gonna sound arrogant, but most of the
No, I
time,
think that it's fair to say I think this is a fair time to be arrogant.
I don't even think it's arrogant. I just think it's gonna come off as arrogant. I am adept enough, but also just naturally, I know there's some competency there, but also I feel like it's just a human experience thing that like we know when somebody's out of control or out of pocket, you know, and we can see it easier than they can because they're not in it. Like it's social self awareness requires feedback. You can't be meta all the time. Like you can't be looking at yourself experience life all the time. And when you're not, and even when you are, you're gonna miss things. This is why I over index on peer support and feedback and collaboration because you don't know what you're doing most of the time you're doing stuff. And some people are better at it than others, and those people are professionals, right? But even professionals have coaches. Why? Like for this exact reason. So it's maybe that was a digression, but what I'm getting at is most of the time I ask questions in a session or in a feedback interaction, like they're rhetorical. Like the reality is I don't care what their answer. Maybe I shouldn't post this, but the answer feels like I don't care what your answer is either. Like in the same breath as you, because I know that your answer is rooted in in a lack of control or in emotion or whatever. You know, it's like this is why when I'm coaching people, and this is why I have the strong feelings that I do about the predominant and bad version of therapy that exists, is that there's so much time spent masturbating to the problem. You know, it's like that doesn't solve anything. It doesn't. it might bring you some clarity, but and when it's done effectively, it does. But you only need enough clarity to be able to develop the solution. Like you don't need to know every inch of a problem to solve it. You don't. You need to know the principle, the core of the problem to solve it. And the more you obsess about every other detail, the more far off you are from solving it. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I got a little all over the place
No,
there,
that's
but
okay. I think that some of that actually makes for wonderful content. I would say that I'll just ask the question again. What do you do to like combat bullies? And like, how do you become authoritative?
yeah,
Because I noticed that high energy becomes a defense mechanism for me to accomplish that which I want. But with it's just not the most effective approach for me to be doing every time. And so I want to adjust it. I want to change it.
how do I respond to bullies?
People taking over conversations, disrespecting.
Um, this might be interesting. Honestly, I don't know how to answer this question, but I'm going to do my best. It might be interesting to hear that I actually feel a rage. I feel a rage in me when I get disrespected. And
So do I.
that, yeah, which is why I'm saying it. I want you to know that I feel that rage as well. Um, and the way that I respond to that rage, it's like aggression through logic. And this is actually why this is why I decided to become this version of me, and it's modeled after Malcolm X and his response to bullies, which I love. I think it's there's so much there, but how do I respond to bullies? I respond to bullies with intelligence. My authority comes from my intelligence. That's definitely true. Um, I respond with curiosity when it feels appropriate. There's like another thing that might be worth mentioning is there's a wrong way to be right, and even if a bully is right, like them being a bully makes them wrong, and so there's just like a baseline of respect that I think needs to be present in relationships, and anything else isn't productive or isn't a relationship. So there's a certain point that I definitely can hit where it's like a timeout. This is what I'm seeing, and this isn't acceptable. You know?
Mm. And okay, this is actually first of all very helpful. I have a question that you'll enjoy. What do you think? What do you think Malcolm X does to respond to bullies? You said that he's a muse for you. What does he do?
Yeah. First of all, I encourage anybody who ends up watching this to watch Denzel Washington play Malcolm X in a Spike Lee
I
movie.
haven't seen it, but I'm gonna watch it because I saw I was like I'm on a Denzel tear and I'm watching all of his stuff, like even the old stuff, like
Oh,
Crimson
amazing.
Tide, and he's definitely my favorite like African American actor, black actor ever, and
Yeah.
so he's just the best. And I saw that he was in that, so I'm totally gonna watch it.
I call me as soon as you watch it. This movie,
Okay.
literally, you're gonna see so much of me in this movie, or rather, you're
Okay.
gonna see
Cool.
so much of this movie in me, and I think you'll find
Okay.
your answer when you watch it. So I'm super
Cool.
excited for you to watch it. I'm probably gonna watch it in the next 24 hours as well.
Cool.
So here's the thing: it's like, how do you deal with a racist? How do you deal with a sexist? How do you deal with um, a homophobic person? How do you deal with someone who's violent? I think maybe the last one is a little tricky, but like I don't that fire like internally what happens when I feel that fire is like whoa, they just got a reaction out of me, a strong reaction out of me that I actually don't like. So I acknowledge that fire, and then I'm like, And then the question, it becomes a question of authority. It's like, why why were they allowed to do that? Better yet, they're not allowed to do that. So you're not going to evoke any type of response out of me that I don't want to give you, because you don't have that authority, first and foremost. And then second of all, who do you think you are? You know? Like, straight up, like, on what grounds do you feel like this behavior is acceptable? And um and then I'm going to challenge like the investigation. We're getting somewhere with this conversation now. The investigation is not one of like justice. It's it has this like, the curiosity is like, it's like an authority driven curiosity where it's like, oh shit, can't hear me.
Are you there?
Oh yeah, somehow it muted. um what's the last thing you heard?
You said this investigation is not like a justice thing.
Okay, cool. um I'm just gonna restart a bit. So through talking in this conversation, I've realized like I'm investigating moments that I've had like that, and I can strongly identify with the the fire, the rage, the strong emotion that I feel being disrespected in any way, and my impulse, which is definitely like founded in my experience as a wrestler and mastery of my emotions, like, or stress, and that in those instances it's like questioning the stress, questioning the emotion. It's like, first of all, whoa, I just felt, or I am feeling a really strong emotion. They just evoked a really strong emotion in me. How did that happen? Like, first of all, if they're evoking that strong of an emotion in me, they probably shouldn't have whatever authority they have. Did I give it to them? In either way, you know? And then it's like, okay, if I did give it to you, clearly you don't deserve it. And if I didn't give it to you, then you kind of stole that from me. So I'm going to take it back because you don't have that authority. And then it's like, it's a very like stern type of curiosity, you know? It's like, I'm really curious. Like, on what grounds did you feel motivated, inspired, justified in behaving that way? Like, first of all, you behaved that way. Second of all, on what grounds did you behave that way? And it's, there's something like, there's something stern and maybe authoritative about that curiosity. And it's rhetorical. You know, it's like, whatever you're about to say is wrong. Like, whatever you're about to say, let me correct myself. Whatever you're about to say in response to that is your truth, and that's rationale, but it's not justification. So let me make that clear. And that's really the a different type of curiosity than like a loved one lashing out at me being like, "Hey, like, are you having a bad day?" But
So
it's actually kind of similar to that energy too.
just hopping off mute here for a sec. I want to guide you a little bit because before you said that you said all this. I know you're repeating it probably for the content,
Yeah.
but like I think you should cut into what, to be clear, you're not looking for justice. I think that that point is interesting.
Yeah. It's not about, it's not looking for justice. It's really like the act of upholding self-respect, and I'm not looking for justice. I'm implementing justice, if that makes sense. You know, it's like I don't I don't want, it's not about, it's not about like collecting evidence to determine whether what someone did was right or wrong. It's like, even if your intention was good, that was the wrong execution. So
Ooh, dude, what you just said was powerful. Like that line of "I'm not looking for justice, but I'm implementing it."
yeah,
It's so powerful because that think about what that does. It removes justice from being externally
Yeah.
controlled,
Yeah.
and it's an
Exactly.
internal thing. It's like I will like justice starts and ends with me,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of empowerment in that because I can assume that a lot of people wait for justice to happen outside of them,
Yeah.
and that's not a process you can control. I do
Exactly.
have one follow up question to this, which is which is like when you do call people out and you do get questioned, like curious. Uh, one with what you get curious. What's your north star? Be curiosity. What are you looking for? Like, how do you base your line of questioning? Is it based on what their outcome and objective is? Is it like what's your north star for questioning?
Yeah. I mean, the North Star is understanding. Like, even in the first thing that we talked about when we got on a call today, I was referencing or supposing that there's a story behind the behavior that you ended up being on the receiving end of, and that story has nothing to do with you. So, like, just realizing, like, just considering, being considerate of the context of people that you're engaging with brings compassion. It's like, if I start to think about what would motivate me to act the way that somebody did, clearly something else is going on. And how would I want somebody to respond? Maybe you don't even have to go that far. Maybe you can do a lazy version of curiosity where you just acknowledge the fact that if a bully is bullying me, it's because they're hurt. And I don't even.
Yes, and okay, with you here, and I'll add like a question. I know I'm interrupting. I'm just kind of almost home.
Yeah, no worries.
I've done like a loop, but um, like yes, understanding, but understanding what like if it does become a line of questioning, sure, understanding that is beautiful, but understanding what next, like what it is that they want, what it is that they're looking for here.
Oh, it's about what they're feeling. Like, people's behavior is basically always motivated by emotion, right? So if I
That
don't
kind of
like,
feels like awkward. Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to reply to that quickly. That feels like an awkward thing to ask, especially in a business setting. Maybe I'm just bad at asking it, which could be the case. In that, like, what is it that you're feeling right now? Like, feels like a very
yeah, it's not.
personal question.
I said that's the North Star, but it's not the question.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's the answer. That's the subtext of the line of questioning. But
Ooh, okay.
how you ask that is going to be appropriate to the person in the setting. So if we're at work and you're acting a certain way, and I'm managing you, is going to be very different than if you're a peer, very different than if you're my boss. Being at work is different than being at home. Your parent is different than your spouse, your friend. Um, that's where it becomes a reflection of who they are. Like, communication is the art of transferring thought from one mind, or an idea from one mind to another, right? So if I'm going to do that, then my focus needs to be on how best I can communicate, how best I can be received. And so it's not about me coming at the conversation with a way of doing that that's my way. Like, my way is whatever you need. So if I'm fully participating, you have my full attention, like, I'm gonna be able to do my best at that. And then I'm gonna bring whatever energy is required or authority is required or whatever, and then it's all competency from there. You get better at it, the more proficient, the more you study, the more you
Yeah,
experience it.
that's and like so. Can you give me a little coaching here? In that your north star is understanding, which is beautiful, and then what's your north star as far as like the rubber meeting the road on the line of questioning? How do you begin basing that line of questioning? Because I'm just a little more linear in my thinking with this right now, and that if it's to understand how they feel, that's where I'm going to go, and I'm going to start asking questions about feeling, I naturally go to what their objective is. Like, what's their outcome? What do you like? What? Why are we talking? Like, why is it important to you?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
So here's the problem with that is that most times people don't know.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it as well. That's why I almost feel a little disempowered,
Yeah, so the questions are about guiding them to realizing that.
guiding them to realizing what.
The answer to that question of like what they're feeling or what they want or whatever. Like it sounds like you want to work context to this, so let me try to put myself in that headspace. If I'm trying to work with you, let's say in an HR capacity, because that's where I was last when we worked together, and you're on media and you're struggling with employees or your boss or something like
Why
that.
don't, why don't I give you just a Peter example?
Sure.
So we can chew on it. So like he'll come and be like, "Hey, we need to implement a new social media content strategy for Twitter. I need more video. Where are all the videos?" And we've had this conversation a lot for context between you and I. Videos don't perform well on his Twitter. Tweets do, like actual written. No, I consume Twitter. I want to see the videos, Nick. Okay. Well, do you want your Twitter to be for you, or do you want it to grow?
Yeah.
Like, what's the like? What do you want? I want both. Well, why does Lex Friedman do video and it works for him? I don't know. That's what works for him. Like writing works for you. So that's the shitty context that I have, but that's context.
Okay. So if I'm you in that conversation, I'm saying, do we want to learn or do we want to perform? And our learning informs our ability to perform. I realize like it's
That's such a good question. Dude, you're so good at this. Like, it's actually annoying how good you're at it. That's such a good question.
But I
Like,
mean, seriously, like what you're telling me you want to perform. If you had the competency to perform, you'd be performing.
yeah,
If your way worked, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I wouldn't use those words per se, but that would be the subtext for sure. And then it's like, okay, do we want to learn or do we want to perform? Well, the it's rhetorical. We want to perform, but if our performance isn't adequate, then we need to learn, regardless of what we want.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we want to perform at the same time, then what do we do? Because this is practical. Nobody's ever in just a learning phase or just a performance phase, but we have predominant.
So, time out, time out, time out. I'm gonna pause you because you're about to give me an incredible rant and basically show off. And because I'm tight on time, I have to cut you off.
All right.
Because it's incredible what you're saying. How the fuck can I begin learning that skill of questioning? Because that is very good. Like I'm asking you to analyze yourself, and you might not have an answer right here, but to begin understanding where you base that line of questioning it. Because that what you just said, Kyle, is so powerful.
Okay, I actually have the answer.
Wow, what is it?
The answer is mastery of yourself. Like,
As in me mixing?
yeah, like when I ask these questions, I'm not thinking of Peter or you. I'm thinking about performance. Like I'm thinking about like this module, all of those modules, this growth MBA that I put together. Like there's a reason why I call it the growth MBA. Like this is how you grow. It's how I grow. It's also how I coach. It's also the fruits of all of my research and lived experience. It's like how could I how could I advise people on this if I didn't have it figured out?
Mm.
And
So
not just
how
that,
does
but I
mastery of self? How
not,
does that guide the line of questioning? Though that's where I'm.
say that again. Sorry.
How does mastery of self guide your line of questioning?
Well, it's kind of like emotional intelligence. Like we can only recognize people as deeply as we've recognized ourselves. So your questions will get good the better your understanding gets. First of yourself, because social intelligence, which is what I'm exhibiting with those questions, is a function of self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Ooh, you're right. Damn, that's so powerful. That's called teaching me how to fish and not giving me a fish, because now I'm realizing that if my focus is mastery of self, which is a worthy expedition in all circumstances, my responses become about like practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like this is practice. And I might not be as good as you. I won't be. Maybe sometimes by accident, but definitely not to start. But my response would, like, to that situation would be, do you want to like listen to the data, or did you want to try your strategy?
Yeah.
And it is your question, but yours is better. Like
I'm better practiced is all. I've just been working out this muscle, but you're right, and that's why you're able to find your own words now, because you do get this. You know, the
yeah,
degree to which you get it is gonna determine the eloquence of the delivery, but like you get it and they get it. Like this is human experience. This is why I can coach anybody in any profession, because
yeah.
growth is the same.
I think that I just want to put this out there that I think can I give you some coaching as to what I think your North Star actually is?
Sure.
And take it or leave it. I believe it's helping.
Yeah, me too.
It's to contribute. Like that. That is the guiding force in these questions, because the best questions come from truly helping. What is helping? Well, let's meet them where they're at. What is not meeting them where they're at is, well, what do you want from this, Peter? That's not meeting him where he's at. That's meeting him where you're at.
Yeah.
Meeting him where he's at is saying, okay, uh, like, does he want to learn, or does he want to perform? That's an excellent question for him in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, dude, damn, that's so powerful. Are you recording my voice right now? Because I'm gonna ask for this recording.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna write this as a note to myself, because my hands are freezing and I can't write. That my learnings from this conversation are, one, on the high energy, great energy thing. Great energy equals presence, and uh, for me, that shows up as a version of high energy. It's not necessarily like one, but it's a version of it. That's me. That's higher than what I normally display. That I can make a standard for my life, and I'm going to work on practicing it as I get good at honing it in different circumstances. Secondly, the quote unquote high energy thing became a defense mechanism for replacing my weakness with being authoritative and firm and effective. But the truth is, I know how to do that. The best strategy is to lead with caring and empathy, and practice it even when it's difficult, in the sense of mastering oneself. To master oneself is a solution, because if you're focused on mastery, it's a great expedition to be on for all. And yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, of all the people that I talk to, Nick, I get the most like you bring out the best in me when we talk, and whether that's you leading and facilitating and providing, or me learning by doing the same, it's always awesome, man. So thank you. I really love these conversations.
I do too. I first of all, thank you, and I feel very similarly. I think that's our love language as friends, of conversation
Mm-hmm.
at our best, and it's fighting at our worst, which is fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree. I want to say, as a producer, that I'm very confident in what that content will be for you. Now, if I may, how I would consider cutting it is I would have it transcribed. It's the first thing I would do. I'd pass it through transcription software, wherein it identifies who's speaking. So there's AI that can do that now.
Yeah.
And then once you identify who's speaking, I would control search it for keywords and moments that you remember to be particularly impactful on your delivery. And then I would go to those moments, review them, and then you walk into finessing the clip. Like that's what becomes your work. And so, on estimate, I reckon that we got between 5 to 10 excellent clips from that, but they're going to take some finessing and cheating to get them out. And so, first step, transcribe. Second step, control F, pull those timestamps out of the actual video, and then watch them and cut them
And as you're cutting them, I want you to not think linearly about the cut. Think about cheating it. Think about pulling up a sentence to the beginning and like workshopping the story in post so you can get the point across. And there's just going to be a lot there. Like a lot. I don't know if I told you, but did I tell you about my new client?
No.
Oh, okay, true. So I closed Trevor Noah recently on
Who?
Spotify. Trevor Noah.
Come on.
Yeah, and so I've been working with Spotify a lot, which has been really good.
Awesome.
And so I've been like at the feet of I've never in my life met better creatives on social than these people.
Wow.
And so
wow, dude, congrats. That's sick.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm like excited. Like what I'm telling you is what they do for all their clips. I've never seen it before. It's wild. They will take a transcription of an episode. They'll listen to the episode. They will earmark moments that were noteworthy, and then they will finesse it. Like, dude, I've never seen people finesse edits like this in my life. Like, I thought with podcasting, I was doing advanced shit. These guys are doing next level shit. They'll like take a moment and they'll like move up a line from 38 minutes and they'll just bring it into the clip because it makes sense. And they know exactly where to cheat moments, exactly where to mix them.
Wow.
Exactly like how to pace a video for like a laugh. So they'll be like, all right, we need to have a clear setup. Oh, that setup's taking way too long. What can we shave? Because on social, we need to get to it quick. Okay, whose video do we want to show first? Can't be the guest because they're not as well known. We got to lead with Trevor. Like we need to pull in a clip just for that. And it's just advanced thinking. So I encourage you to do this because it's a lot of fun when you get a really sick edit on the other end.
Yeah. Wow, man. I could not have asked for a better gift. Thank you for that. I've been building the habit of posting this content on YouTube and then using a GPT that transcribes it. I know I shared that process with you, and I've been starting to research like how that GPT is made so that I can do it without posting it on YouTube and in relation to some other tools and projects for Grow. Yeah, definitely more to talk on there, but I'm familiar with the first bit of what you said and not familiar at all with the rest, but I will deep dive and I'll definitely appreciate any more conversation we can have on it another time.
Yeah, for sure. I think like the most effective way for you and I to work on it is like the way that I can help you the most with this is that find a moment that you love from this conversation, cut it, and like do your best to storyboard it. Don't worry about the format, any of that shit, and then send it to me, and then I'll just finesse the edit with you. And I think the best thing to do is for us to do that together.
Bro, amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
I'll try to make the clip like a 90-seconder because I think that'll be where the most potency is, and we'll finesse the edit.
Amazing. Sometime I just realized this is going to be slightly sad news, but I also know how we can potentially fix it with some tools. But I noticed the last stretch of content that we just did, my mic wasn't like the mic. I had two mics set up on my phone. One of them is like on my laptop to record you, and one of them was on a mic that, like a arm mic or whatever. And for some portion of the end of it, it wasn't recording, so the audio won't be as good. I know there's tools that I found and earmarked that enhance the audio, so maybe that's an option, but that also wasn't the whole conversation. It was the last bit. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can use there. So no worries, man. Just a day in the life. The amount of times I've had to stumble through that is insane. So I've just scar tissue after scar tissue. Trust me, there's still a lot there.
Awesome. All right, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Dude, this was a lot of fun. I'm happy we did it. Thanks for your time. I appreciate all the advice and the coaching too.
Likewise, brother. Peer support.
All
Take
right,
care.
love you, buddy.
Love
Take
you.
it easy. Bye.
See ya.